Hi there and hello everybody. Welcome to episode number 10 of the Taking Up Space podcast. I know, right? With Stacia and Dré. I'm Andre and the Flow. It's so wonderful being with you on what I believe to be still a Sunday.
It's Sunday, and also it is Libra full moon, just FYI for you astrology hoes.
Please tell me what it means to be in a Libra full moon while I adjust sound and things over here.
Okay, well, I mean, I don't know that I'm any authority on what that means, but I like to use full moons energetically as a time for releasing things that no longer serve me, or things that I've been working on. It's a time to sort of reflect and intention set for things that I want to let go of. New moons are for things that I want to bring in or manifest into my life. And then the way the astrological sign fits into that kind of intentionality between bringing things in and letting things go is that whatever, each sign has its own characteristics or symbols. Libra, for example, is about balance. Libra is associated with law, justice, balanced scales. The symbol for Libra is scales. And so for me personally, I will be intention setting this Libra full moon about letting go of imbalances basically in my life, or areas that are pulling me out of my alignment, out of my flow, to release those things, to release lingering compulsions, obsessions that distract me from being in a flow state, to bring in justice, especially justice in love, and me being able to embody what it means to have a balance in spirit and in heart and in mind. So anyways, that's, I guess, what a short long answer.
I love it. I love it. You said bring in and let go, a time of bringing in and letting go. And I think that we all have to navigate this balance of what it means to bring certain energies into our heart and to let other energies go. And that happens all the time. I feel like throughout every day, all day, I'm both bringing things in and I'm also letting those things go. Thanks everybody for watching, and for the people that stopped by a little earlier. We're so grateful to be able to be here. Before we jumped on air, we took some time to just offer gratitude for the fact that we are the ancestors' dreams, and that none of them niggas had green screens and walls and jazz music beds and stuff. Music today brought to us by Chill Hop. Shout out to the folks over at Chill Hop. Thank you for at our shit. For those of you who cannot read, we're going to be discussing the Pixar movie Soul.
It's not funny. I get that was an accessibility thing. I'm trash. Anyway.
Well, I mean, that's why we put the banner down there so people can know. For those of you who will be listening back to the podcast later, it just says, thank you for watching the Taking Up Space podcast with Stacia and Dré, episode 10. Today we are discussing the Pixar movie Soul, and then we're asking viewers to let us know in the comments what your thoughts are. We can't see you unless you comment. We'd love to give you a shout out.
Yes.
And bring you in and also let you go.
Real talk.
Because it is what it is. How's your last week been, Stacia J. Turner? I don't think that we've checked in with each other in public on a live stream since about it was episode 9 was about Black History Month. Yeah. So it's
word.
Yeah. Thanks to everybody who's watching. Like I said, let us know in the comments if you hated Pixar's movie Soul. If you loved it, we'd love to hear from you. The last month, Stacia, how's it been?
I mean, it's been up and down. But overall it's been good. It's been good, especially after coming off of rewatching Soul. Yeah, I mean, it's been good and bad, but I want to say it's been good in that I'm happy to be alive and COVID free, and even though I've had trials and tribulations, I think the most of us have, objectively I've been good. I have a job, I have a home. I have beloveds like you.
I love you too.
I have food. It's my basic level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs are being met and then some. And I'm finding joy and love and happiness. And so like things are good. Life is always going to have things that are challenging.
Let's riff on that for a second. I'll go with you. Where are you finding joy?
I'm finding joy. I'm happy to say this because it's been a real struggle, as you know, Andre. I'm starting to find more joy in work, and that I'm realizing that like a lot of my challenges are unrealistic expectations of perfectionism that I set, and that like I forgot why I started this is a great lead into our conversation about soul, but like, I think I was realizing like I'm so stressed. I have all these pressures professionally in this like new position of leadership, and all of that pressure that mainly I'm putting on myself is making me lose sight of why I love organizing community, healing like community and environment, talking about like all of the miraculous things that our earth does for us. Like I was losing sight of like how passionately I feel about the nature that sustains us because I was putting so much pressure on myself. And so I don't know, I'm finding joy in remembering the simple joys of like the fact that I get to, what a gift it is to do the thing that I love professionally and get paid to do it. I'm finding joy in relationships like ours. I'm ever grateful to like have found someone like you. We like gush about it all the time, and I'm going to keep doing it because like truly I have so much gratitude for our friendship and the way you've like cheerlead me consistently and make me feel this resonance of like spirit, that I don't lose sight of the fact that that is a gift. It's truly a gift that some people search their whole lives for in terms of like connection. And I'm just like, I'm about to cry about it, but like, I'm so
easy
grateful
for you. You're very easy to love. I think that everybody's on some level easy to love, but you're very easy to love. Like our exchanges and the ebb and flow. I mean, it's just beautiful. You pointed earlier to simplicity and simple joys. And that's something that's bringing me joy these days. Like just allowing things to be exactly as they are. I'm not over seasoning the food. I'm not over sugaring the drinks. I'm just keeping it very, very simple because sometime last year when the shit was hitting the fan for everybody, I was like, things had gotten really, really squirrely. I'm the type of person where if my house is junky and messy, my mental state gets messy. If I'm eating all kinds of junk, it starts to affect my body. And I know that's like a hashtag duh for a lot of people, but I really had to like deliberately get simple in my approach. And then as an extension of eating simply and behaving simply and kind of boiling down my relationships to simplistic terms, like, is our love pure or not in our relationships? I'm talking romantic. I'm talking like you and me, Stacia. Is the love in this relationship pure? Are we
right? Is it real or not? Like,
yeah. Are we coming to bring the water as the motorcycle goes by? Are we coming to bring the water, or are we coming to take? And we just have to we have to get real about that in 2021. Okay, so today we decided that we want to talk about Pixar's movie Soul. It is a movie that came out last year. It's directed by Pete Docter. It was produced by Dana Murray. So it only had one producer. Only one person produced it. And it starred Jamie Foxx, Tina Fey, Graham Norton, Rachel House, Alice Braga, Richard Ayoda, I don't know, Felicia Rashad, Donald Rollins. Questlove was in the movie, and also Angela Bassett. What do you think about the casting and the people they chose to tell the story before we get into the story?
Oh, I just wanted to add that it was co-directed by Kemp Powers, just because that's significant, because he co-directed and I think co-wrote the movie, and he's Black, and this was the first time Pixar had like a Black-centered movie. So I just wanted to shout out Kemp Powers because that is noteworthy, and also leads to the question I guess we can get into later of like, why did it take this long? But anyways,
Kemp Powers is an American film co-director, screenwriter, and playwright. He's best known. Am I coming through really hot over there for you?
Not for me. You're Gucci.
He's best known for his work on the play One Night in Miami and the 2020 film adaptation of the same name, Star Trek Discovery, and also Soul. He became the first African-American to co-direct a Disney animated feature. That's wild.
Mm-hmm.
Their history of white supremacy and racism, it's very interesting that they didn't throw that token at us sooner.
Yeah.
In times of like uncertainty, as we're experiencing right now in our country, we get a lot of first. First cabinet members, first Asian, first Black. We get a lot of first when they want to do everything but reparate us.
Yeah, that's something. I'm glad you brought that up because, like, as you asked, like, about the significance of the sort of like Black cast and sort of the first time Pixar is having a Black-centered character in a movie. Mm-hmm. It's weird. The framing just feels weird. Like, not for you to frame it that way, but the fact that like this is the first time we're getting all of this stuff feels weird. Because it's not like there are not and haven't been Black screenwriters, directors, showrunners, all those things, voice actors. And so it's like, obviously, I, as a Black person, feel like give us all of the things as soon as possible. But it also feels like it just still feels like crumbs for it to have taken this long. And also the fact that, like, I don't know, I just feel like it's like co-directed. So like, Kemp's not the first person in the wiki that you read about. And like, it has the air of like, look at what we've given you guys. Like, isn't it great that like, this is, like it's trying to articulate that like, it's something noteworthy that it's like the first Black, whatever. It's like, I'm trying to articulate what I'm saying. It's just fresh.
Let's take a break.
Okay. I know I'm getting so angry, like trying to like think of what I mean.
The movie's been produced, so I think you're safe in this moment. So how do you feel?
Yes, I'm just exercising feelings beyond this movie. I think the thing I'm trying to get at is that like I don't like how a lot of these firsts that we've observed in 2020 seem reactionary to the Black Lives Matter movement and surge, and it's like, well, in some ways that means Black Lives Matter as a movement is effective, right? It's prompting response. But my feeling of frustration is like, how do we know that this isn't just responsive and that it's not like lasting change? And I guess it's one of those things where only time will tell. But like, the cynic in me as a Black person is like, okay, yeah, but like now it's like, how do we know that this is genuine and not just like you trying to ride out the good PR of doing Black shit as a response to Black Lives Matter? Do you know what I mean?
I get it. It's very convenient that the movie came out in 2020. Like I wonder how long this movie had sat on someone's desk.
Well, I think from when I was reading in the wiki, they started 2016, I think is when, Doctor began developing the film in 2016, working from his contemplations on the origins of human personalities and the concept of determinism. So since 2016.
Black Lives Matter has been around since then, if not before, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or was Black Lives Matter 2018?
No, it's before. It was at least 2016, I'm pretty sure. Let me
okay. So to reset the room, thanks everybody for tuning in for as long as you can. We are just doing a deep dive on the movie Soul, for those of you who've seen it. It premiered at the London Film Festival on October 11th of last year. And according to Wikipedia, the film received highly positive reviews from critics. with praise for its animation, story, voice acting, and musical score. Of course, led by Jamie Foxx and Tina Fey. Won at the 78th Golden Globe Awards for Best Animated Feature Film and Best Original Score. Okay, so for those of you who aren't familiar with the movie, Joe Gardner is who it starts with. He's a middle school teacher from New York City. He dreams of playing jazz music, and he gets this opportunity to play for someone that's big.
Famous jazz musician. Yeah.
Yeah. You can pick up from here, Stacia.
Yeah. So, it follows basically a black man getting this seemingly like opportunity of a lifetime to do what his life goal has been to do, which is to sort of like get to play with jazz greats, because he is a jazz. He thinks that his purpose in life is to be a great jazz musician. And so the movie sort of starts off with him getting this opportunity to play with a jazz great on a gig. And this is kind of an opportunity he's been waiting for. He's tried to have other gig opportunities where he feels like it legitimizes him as a jazz musician, and just keeps missing the mark. And finally, he gets this like shining opportunity to, go on the pathway towards what he thinks his purpose in life is, basically.
I love the opening of this film when he's in the class with all the students, and anybody who has been part of any music program or band program will understand what it's like to be in a band room and to completely have.
It was accurate.
Is very accurate, the sounds that were coming out of that situation, but then to watch him sit down at the piano and kind of get lost in his own sauce, it's really amazing. And they don't even focus on this in the actual plot of the Wikipedia article, which I'm not sure if they're not wanting to give it away.
We forgot a spoilers alert.
I mean, they can tell by now.
You can get it by now. Spoilers if you haven't seen Soul. Like,
we're discussing the whole movie. I mean, I don't have to tell you. Turn us off now if you've not seen the movie, and then come back later and listen to it in the replays. When he's at the piano in that sequence, though, he completely gets caught up in it and almost taken out of the classroom into this
trance-like state.
Far off place, which anybody who's ever been in their creative flow understands that you can get caught up in it that way. And it was something that
trademark ethereal materials.
Right. It was the kids wanting to learn their instruments and kind of like have their period and their discussion in class. But then when he sat down and started talking about how music affects him, he just got enraptured by it.
And I just want to like riff on that component about him getting, it's like his spark is the spark to the students, or the students that have a similar spark for music. And I think it's that way for mentors and or good teachers. For all of us who have had good teachers, I think most people who've been educated have hopefully at least had one where it's like their passion for the subject makes you give a shit about the subject, because you're like, wow, I didn't really care about geometry before, but like this teacher's passion for geometry is making me kind of like, that energy is making me care more. The way they explain things, because like they love this subject, is making it seem more accessible to me, because that energy is infectious, I
enjoyed Joe in this opening scene because everybody wants to have, to your point, that kind of passionate teacher around them. I think that the world is made better by teachers like that, as opposed to people who are just punching the clock. Okay, so this guy, he learns of an opening in a jazz band. Dorothea Williams, who I believe is voiced by Angela Bassett, she's impressed with him. He does the exact thing. What I want to speak to right now is the consistency of Joe's passion. The way he played in the classroom was the same way that he played for Dorothea.
Yep. Well, yeah, because he thinks his passion is his purpose. So that tracks. From my perspective. Yeah.
Well, I mean, once we find out who he is. But in this moment, as we know him, when he's just stepping in and she's saying, "Oh, so you're the piano player, go on over there and play us something." He allows the same way that he got caught up in the energy in the class to then translate to the energy there. And it eventually, I just want to make the point that that's what booked him the gig. The fact that he was consistent in his energy, I feel. They don't get into this in the story, but I found it very telling that the same place he went to in the class was the place that he went to in the club.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, also, I just wanted to make a call back to the timing of Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter started as a hashtag in 2013. So it was long before, well, long is relative, but, 2013 is when Black Lives Matter popped off as a movement. So before this script was started.
And to my point, then 7 years it took them to get to the point to where a Black person could co-direct and that the main protagonist of a film could be a Black man.
Mm-hmm.
Which actually turns into something else we find. Okay, so he gets so excited that Dorothea agrees for him to perform later that night. He heads out and he falls in a manhole.
I shouldn't laugh, but the absurdity of him getting this opportunity and then his life getting cut short is I don't know. That's a good storytelling beat, I think.
Why do you think it's a good storytelling beat?
Because it's already prompting this idea that it's prompting the audience to think about you're supposed to think wow, his life gets snatched away from him just as he's sort of getting the things that he's wanted, or just as his purpose is being manifested. But
that's into a fear within people that they're somehow not going to it's that other shoe drop kind of thing. It's I got a dream, and of course I'd fall into a manhole.
Yeah, absolutely. Which I think is it's a right. That was great timing, great symbolism, energetically, I think. No, but it's I think that's a great place to lead the audience, because I think a lot of us, that's the way a lot of things are framed, right? And to keep us as cogs in a machine, is to have this idea that it's there's a purpose that we each have, and that things are going to be off in our life until we find what our predetermined purpose is. Things are going to be unaligned until we find that, rather than just the concept that I think the movie leads us to is there is no purpose in life other than to live life fully. And if you get so fixated on thinking that there's this specific thing that you have to manifest, you're going to miss the forest for the trees of what it means to live fully.
That's excellent. Okay, so Joe falls into this manhole. He finds himself going into the great beyond, but because he didn't want to die, he ends up running downstream into the great before. And I love the way that they esoterically created this, what some critics call a non-denominational space, where and they did a really good job about that, because they could have appeased the Christians, the born agains. They could have made them really
absolutely, especially happy with Disney.
They could have put some kind of spin on it that made it very palatable and worthy of the eyes of certain religious members of the population. But they kept both the great beyond and the great before very non-denominational. They kept it very, very approachable. They kept it very mysterious. You never really got answers about what was actually in the great beyond on that conveyor belt that was kind of going up. And I love that piece because you don't know, Stacia. I don't fucking
Nobody
know.
Knows. Nobody knows.
Imams don't know. No one knows what happens when we actually go. People speculate. They sing lots of gospel songs about it, but nobody actually knows. And I love the way that they kept that tension point there, because it's just facts.
I also want to say, I really resonated with the aesthetics, the visual aesthetics of these different dimensions or realms, of the great before, the great beyond, also the visual representation of where the lost souls were, as like it wasn't even bad per se. It was like just like darker tones. I don't know. I just really resonated with the aesthetic representation of these spaces. I don't know a better way to verbally articulate that, because, you know, for any of us who have explored other dimensions of experience, some things are hard to describe, but all I can say is that I think the visual representation of these places, like the colors they use and the tones, felt like very on point for these out of body spaces.
Get specific. So you're saying that you loved the marshmallowy, cotton candy feel of the great before?
For me, it's more the colors, like the color tones, and I don't even know what that is. Less so the representation of the little soul blobs, and more so the colors and the textures, like the black space with the like light dots that they used for like the great beyond, and like the bright light for like the place that, you know, the souls go in the great beyond. That I haven't died, obviously, but I've had experiences that made me think I was dead, and they feel like that black and white hue of like, what does it mean to not be in a body? Like, I think that was a great like visual representation for me. And then this like before space, the great before, it being this like pastel pinks and purples and blues, felt like a very ambiguous, yet I don't know, like it just seemed like on point for this like.
Well, I think just to complete your thought that I think you're trying to make is it was an ambiguous yet familiar space.
Yes, thank you.
That's how the great beyond would appear, and it made sense that that's how the great before would appear. For those of you watching, chime in if you watched the movie and let us know what you think. I really actually took to the mentors, which is
you would. I did too.
I loved it because, you know, when she was like, quiet coyote. Like that is the kind of presence. But then once again, they didn't make them look like angels. They didn't make them look like, they didn't ascribe to a certain tradition. They just said like, these are ethereal. Once again, shout out to ethereal materials. These are ethereal beings that can morph themselves, and they are at your aid, and they are there to be helpful, but they're not so defined that you can pin them down the way you do in the world.
I was just going to say, yeah, I'm glad you articulated that. It's like there was an energy of being a mentor, but not an identity, right? They don't have identities. Like the head sort of like mentors are all called Jerry, but they have different voices, right? So they're like different, but it's the energy of mentorship and not like an identity, which I love that kind of like separation, you know?
It gave my LGBTQIA side, which is actually probably like 7% of me people who are watching. I love that people are so obsessed with sexuality and the fluidity of sexuality, even though it makes
gay.
Yeah, I'm not doing gay things all the time. I'm actually just eating breakfast with blueberries, which I don't think is gay.
Trey, that's gay.
Those mentor characters seemed
gay,
like a trans identity to me. Like that they would be able to transcend even gender or the gay distinction that you keep lofting over the fence. They were able to be beyond all of that, and they were able to be in the great beyond, the great before, and then they eventually, assign Joe's energy, because Joe doesn't no longer looks like Joe. He has like the effects of Joe. Like
the hat and the glasses. Yeah.
But he's no longer Joe. And he gets assigned to train the spirit being named 22 that's really problematic, that they've been trying to send to planet Earth for a very long time. But she, voiced by the very annoying Tina Fey, and after Joe fails to find 22 a passion, because passions are what's needed in order to get you to Earth, they head for the zone. And I want to pause for a little bit to talk about what the zone represents, because The zone is a space where people go into. I mean, Joe went into it in the classroom. He went into it with Dorothea. And it's a place that's accessible in the great beyond and the great before as well. But what's happened in the zone is that if you become obsessed,
right, then you get lost.
You get lost in the zone. I want to talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
You want to talk about it? You want me to talk about it?
Sure. I mean, I can start us off. That's one of the major plot points or like concepts in the movie that I really resonated with and that I thought was a really powerful thing to weave into this narrative is the idea that like a conversation about purpose and spark and passion and what is the sweet spot of using your passions in life as a spark to live life, but not something that becomes a compulsion that you're so obsessed with and feeling like if I don't reach this certain accolade or identity within whatever my passion or vocation is, then I'm unfulfilled or I'm unexpressed. It really plays around with those ideas of like what fuels us, what compels us, right? Because the whole story, you know, part of the main narrative of 22 is that they will say they think that they don't have a spark or a purpose. And we see later on in the film, which I also thought was really impactful, how the narrative, this narrative of them thinking like, I don't have a purpose, I don't have a spark, and that's why I can't get my box checked to live life on Earth, is that the voices of so many past mentors who got frustrated with them not being able to assist this soul on finding their spark, their passion, checking all the boxes or whatever, their frustration led to them saying things about it being this soul's fault, you know, and then she embodies this idea like, or they embody this idea that I'm not good enough to go to Earth, which is why I can't, you know, check these boxes of being worthy or valuable enough to live life and experience my soul on Earth. And Joe was one of those who, you know, at the end or in the moment you see basically 22 has become a lost soul. So visually it shows this dark kind of abysmal space, and the souls who are lost here, they kind of iterate, they're lost because they become obsessed with something that distances them from living life.
Now, I'm going to paint this visual for people who've never seen the movie. And if you've never seen the movie, to turn us off right now and go and watch the movie. I highly recommend for all creative types. It was recommended to me by Carl Danielson, my musical director. And then I think I shot it over to Stacia.
You did, yeah.
One great thing that they do in this movie is they illustrate something that Disney, man, they're evil asses. But they really did a great job of representing the transition between being in a good part of the zone, like when you're really writing well or I'm singing well, and then all of a sudden if you get too myopic and if you get too obsessed with your gifts, that's what I got from it. If you get too obsessed with the gifts that have been given, it's
you become lost. Yep.
To slip into it though, it's not even something that you necessarily take on willingly. Just once when anyone gets obsessed with the gifts that have been given, we get lost in it, and then it immediately turns from I think the way they illustrated it was, you know, when you were in the zone, there were hearts going. It was very pinky and purple, and there was all this love energy happen. But the deeper you went into the zone and the more obsessed you got,
it's like dark navy. Yeah.
I even think that some of the characters and some of the souls actually got like covered. They didn't even look like themselves. When
they become this like more amorphous monster type shape when they're in this sort of like abysmal lost souls place.
100%.
But, I just wanted to say quickly, I also love how the movie, they didn't necessarily deem that space or good as bad or bad. Like I liked, even though it was like, well, like I said, it paints this picture that they've like they're lost. They use words like lost, and it shows these soul figures like wandering. But there's this tone of like, there's these different spaces, and like souls will do what they do. It's not like, we're following the certain plot of this one particular character who we've become attached to, hopefully. Mm-hmm. And so we want to pull them out of that space. We want to see the character get to live life. But from my perspective, it wasn't as if like that place was a place that souls shouldn't be. It's just like, these are places that, maybe that's my own perspective of it, but it seemed like in these different spaces that can sometimes be bad, or we'll even use the example of Joe not going on the path that he was supposed to. So he dies, right? And then because he doesn't want to have died, because he was just about to, achieve his dream, his life and dream, that gets snatched away from him by, dying. He tries to, make his own way outside of what the system that was created for him to go to the great beyond. And so there's like an accountant that's trying to track his soul down to go, to follow the beat of going to the great beyond.
Was his name Jerry as well? I feel like the little soul that was trying to track his soul. We haven't gotten there in the notes yet.
I forgot the accountant's name.
I feel like the accountant had a different name, but yeah, I love that guy because that's me.
Stop. But even in the accounting for the soul, when they find him, like the main Jerry, the main sort of like boss character or like mentor character, there's not like a negative energy. They're like, okay, accountant, we know you're very focused on trying to get this soul back on track, but like, you've accounted for the soul, now go back to accounting. It's kind of just like the people who are structuring where the different spaces of the souls, from my perspective, had this tone of like, everything is as it should be. Even if it seems out of the structures that be, it's just like a part of the process of souls figuring out their shit.
Jerry's were never worried.
They were never pressed. They're just like, it's fine.
Even at the end, just to flash forward, spoiler alert. But to flash forward to the end, even when the accountant was still looking for that soul, they were playing jokes on the accountant character, being like, "There's nothing to see here. Like it's all going to work itself out in the end."
I love how they're like, okay, so you're the accountant, so why don't you account for the problem here instead of like, I love that. It was like mildly shady. I was here for it.
Okay, so while they're moving through the zone and they're seeing that there's like a space where people can become obsessed with their dreams, they encounter Moonwind, who is one of my favorite like characters of the entire game. Moonwind comes bearing a troop of hippie mystics, and they help Joe by having him sense his body until he discovers his surrounding. What did you think about the Moonwind character?
I was like, that's me.
with the
Moonwind. I resonated, even though like maybe that's not the way I show up in my mind. I'm like, yes, the shaman character. I was waiting for this one. Yeah.
It was good to see him on the New York corners doing.
Oh, I know, spitting the sign.
It was amazing. Okay, so Joe hops back to Earth, but he accidentally carries 22, and this results in him entering 22 entering Joe's body, and then Joe became a cat. And this is a space where things get really, really interesting for woke Twitter and Black Twitter, because they were like, why did we have to make the Black man a therapy cat?
Can you elaborate on this? Because Grandpa does not follow Twitter.
Right.
You alluded to this a little bit in our prep, and I hadn't even heard this sort of Black Twitter conversation. But if you would care to elaborate what people are annoyed about with that dynamic, I would love to hear it.
Sure. So the idea is that, like I said, this character named Joe, who's the Black guy, he's the first, for context, he's the first Black protagonist of any Disney film. Remember, they made Princess Tiana a frog.
Sure.
like, not too distant long ago. And
That's fair.
Their idea is why do Black people have to always be made into pets over at Disney? Not everywhere. But why do Black people at Disney have to be made into pets? Some would argue that everybody's an animated figure over at Disney. That's a human, right? There's no human.
To be fair, right?
But why, when we see Black people presented to make them palatable to mainstream culture, they must be put into Mr. Mittens?
I'm sorry. Okay.
How do you feel about it? Because like all being valid, how do you feel?
I personally feel like this is an example of when identity politics turns back on itself.
You don't like
because
you talk about that all the time.
I just think that, like, I won't say I don't like identity politics, because I think as humans, like, identity to me is the shell of our experiences, right? It's our culture. Our identity to me is the shell of our experience. So what I mean by that is it is the representation of our culture, our cultural experiences and practices, our ethnicity. It's all of those things manifested in who is a Stacia, who is a Dré, that we are Black, that we are queer, that we grew up middle class, all of these sort of
spiritual, the list goes on,
spiritual, etc. But at the end of the day, if we want to get back to souls or even humanism, that our humanity, at a certain point, those identities just end up slicing and dicing people in a way that isn't true to, like, a more unifying identity, which is our humanity. And so, like, I mean, I think it's valid for everyone to have their own critiques and feelings, but, like, I guess I don't follow that one personally, because I think that, like, at least in me following the story personally, it's just like the concept of if we're getting to soul, right? It's like the fact that Joe Gardner was a Black man is like a part of his character, yes, but like he was a human. You know what I mean? We're following a human story, and I actually think
that experience.
Right, and I think that, like, that's actually more empowering than if they had, like, called out all of these things about his, like, Black identity in the narrative, or if they had treated him in this way that was, like, I don't know. It's just like in good storytelling, I think you get lost in the characters, the characters and not their identities. And so to sort of say, like, how dare they put a Black man as, like, a cat? It's just like, if the character was white and that happened, or any other ethnicity, I don't necessarily think that I would have felt a kind of way. Now, if the character had gotten put into a pet chimp, then I would have been like, excuse me? Because there's a specific sort of narrative of Black people being associated with primates and monkeys and apes. You know what I mean? And so, like, for me, that would have been triggering. But, like, I don't know. I think that, like, sometimes people are using the fact that you can get attention to do critique about some kind of identity politics as an excuse to do it without there necessarily being legs behind it. But that's just my tea on it personally.
I didn't know that part of your argument, that if Mr. Mittens had been, say, a chimpanzee, I mean, we know that they would never do that. Like, that would not pass a single focus group. There's no way that...
I don't know, bro. They still pass... I mean, we still have Aunt Jemima on fucking syrup.
We don't. She's gone now.
Is she?
Yeah, they rebrand it.
Oh, okay.
But I mean, I'm not taking that from you, because there's tons of examples of this happening in society. Okay, so back to the story. So, 22 ends up in Joe's body. Mr. Mittens, the therapy cat, ends up, Joe enters his body. They find Moonwind, who is a sign twirler by day, and he agrees to meet them later. 22 in the meantime is trying to basically figure out what it's like to be a human. And what did you think about that experience? The conversations that she's holding and all of that.
Well, I think it was great because 22 experiencing life through Joe Gardner's body served two purposes from my perspective in terms of the narrative. The first one is that like it starts to lead the audience to this idea. I think this transition in thinking of like the purpose of life is all these collections of moments, right? Like that's what experiencing life is. That is the purpose, is to live as fully and mindfully as possible. All those moments where you remember that, your first love, the time when you ate a lollipop when you were a kid off the subway floor or whatever, like the first time you ate pizza.
What's going on with you? Is that what happened to you?
No, I never even rode a subway as a child.
Did you eat a lollipop off the subway floor as a
child?
No,
I'm sure I ate something off the floor. You said that explains a lot. These were pre-COVID times, everyone. Calm down. But no, like I think 22's experience in Joe Gardner's body starts to lead you because she's eating pizza, or they're eating pizza for the first time and enjoying like, wow, like, it's leading the audience to sort of reflect on what it was like the first time you ate pizza, if you've eaten pizza, or, like the absurdity of what it would be like to have a lollipop for the first time. And, so it shows like, it leads the audience to reflect on these moments and experiences that resonate for us in the development of our life. The other purpose that like 22 being in Joe Gardner's body serves, I think, in moving the plot forward, is it demonstrates how the world experienced Joe Gardner, which was him being obsessive about jazz, right? Because in the scene where Joe Gardner, 22 as Joe Gardner, goes to get a haircut, 22 is having this conversation about like, what's the meaning of life, kind of. And like everyone in the barbershop is like, preach, and they're like, people are starting to gather around and listen. And then, like 22 is asking the barber about his life, and he's saying like, yeah, like I never wanted to be a barber. I wanted to be a veterinarian, but vet school was really expensive and barber school was a lot less expensive, and I had a kid to sort of raise. But I'm really happy in my life because I get to sort of like make people feel good and feel fresh, and like, like I found joy in the thing that I do, even though it wasn't what I thought my like purpose or vocation was. And you see through that interaction, the barber's basically like, I'm really happy that we had this conversation about something other than jazz. And Joe Gardner says, 22 as Joe Gardner says, why did we never have this conversation before? And he says, because you never asked me. So it leads the audience to see that like Joe was so obsessed with jazz that like he wasn't even fully connecting with other people beyond jazz, like his relationship to jazz, that like he wasn't fully being present with the people who were in his life because he was so focused on feeling like he wasn't achieving his purpose in life. Anyways, that's my thoughts about it.
I mean, what's interesting is that you have lots of thoughts about it, and I don't even remember that part of the film at all.
Well, I just watched it, to be fair. Like,
okay, yeah,
this morning.
I like that part about all of that. I completely was either too under the influence of many great things, or I don't know what happened there, but I completely,
living life fully.
That's it. Meanwhile, Terry. So Terry is the accountant's name, not Jerry, but he's the only one that gets a different name. Terry. He ends up going back to Earth and trying to find them. A jury informs Joe that instead of a purpose, a spark means that a soul is ready to live. So these little, ethereal creatures get sent into these little houses in the Great Before. And Joe thought that the spark had something to do with actually being on Earth, or like a passion or a purpose. But the jury says that that's not the truth at all. In fact, it's just, the spark that happens makes you ready to come into the Earth.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Going on further, so Joe ends up going back. He snatches the bag. 22 angrily tosses the badge at him, and and he ends up having a successful performance with Dorothea, but he's not as satisfied as he desired because he realizes that his dream wasn't different from where he started. How'd you feel about that part?
Yeah, I think it sort of like brings the message home that like, if we get so obsessed with feeling like our gift has to be manifested in a particular way, that we lose the mystery of like that there's a gift to the mystery of life and how we can embody our gifts in different ways. And if we get so caught up in thinking that like we're not going to be fully expressed if we don't manifest our gifts in a particular way, that we're going to get caught up and miss the journey. And so I love how they show that like he gets what he wants and then he still isn't satisfied, because I think that a lot of people can get to that space, myself included, right? As I started off the conversation, it's like objectively, I'm at the place that I dreamed about when I started college, right? I'm working professionally, getting to facilitate conversations about how do we democratically decision make about the environment and natural resources. I'm doing that thing. Like I'm doing the things I practiced in college and in grad school. As another ambulance goes by, that's urban living. I'm living in the city that I chose to live in, independently in my own apartment by myself. Like I'm doing all of those things. And yet it's like, why does happiness sometimes evade me? Well, it's because like, there's always the more monster, as Andre Stith loves to say, as meaning that like, there's always another thing. Once we get the thing that we wanted, then there's always another thing. It can be this perpetual hamster wheel if we don't get a handle on the truth that is like happiness is mindful experience and the joy that we articulate in living as humans, not just like one particular thing that we have to express or embody ourselves as.
Well, I mean, jumping to the end, I mean, it is the maple, I think they call it a maple seed. After chasing 22 down, Joe uses a maple seed that 22 had kept to transport them back to a memory of their time on Earth. Because remember when that maple seed fell down, that was the moment when 22 recognized that like life is so much more than pretty notes and all of these things that people think life is about. It's really about the simplicity of the little seed of the tree coming down. I mean, that's the preciousness of life. Yep.
And I love that they use the word spark, right? Because Joe used the word purpose in life. And you see when 22 is kind of the lost soul, and it shows them reflecting on all these mentors that are basically saying like, you don't have a spark, you don't have a purpose, like it's your own fault that like you can't figure out how to like be worthy of living life. Those voices became larger than their ability to see that like, there is no purpose. It's just to have some spark that fuels you into like living your life. And for 22, it was like actually getting to experience what living is like. But anyways, I love this idea that they use the term spark instead of purpose. They make that shift because I think to me conceptually, it gets the audience to reflect on the idea that like your passion or passions, the thing that like gets you energized, it is that purpose alone. It's the thing to sort of like spark your energy to live the spectrum of experiences that living is, but it's not your purpose, right? Because there is no purpose, I think is the moral of the story, so to speak.
Yeah, takeaway. I loved it. So the last part of this, as he prepares to head into the great beyond, Joe is stopped by Jerry, who offers him another chance at life for inspiring 22 to live. So that was another point that the black people and sort of were talking about. It's like, why do black people always have to be moving in service of the white lady? Do you think that's also a far-reaching thing that like we're somehow rewarded even in the Disney movies with inspiring Tina Fey? Or are we just taking it too far because 22 isn't Tina Fey and Joe ain't Jamie Foxx?
I think there's a yes and a no. Firstly, I'll say I think that is a little bit valid in that there's a trope of the wise black person, right? Like the Bagger Vance type, characteristic of like the wise black mentor. That is an image that you see replayed over and over again. That I think is just like lazy. At the same time, though, I think in this narrative, 22 is not Tina Fey. It is a soul.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's a soul. It's a blob. There is no like ethnic. There's no ethnic identity.
We got to accept the fact that there's some things that are fact and some things that are fiction.
And all of it's valid because I think that's the beautiful thing about storytelling, music, any art form, is that like it transcends whatever the artists or team of artists created in their own particular vision, because we all have our own emotional relationship to a piece of art that I think are all valid, because we all, different things hit different, like symbolically in terms of images, aesthetics, etc. And all of that's valid. That's what art is supposed to be for, I think, is to evoke this conversation with the audience. So I think all of it is fair,
So because he inspired 22 to live, he gets to return to his body on Earth, and he starts the next day committed to enjoying his entire life. And I think it is because he recognized that the spark is different than the passion itself. And when you take the passion too far, you can end up in the fucking sunken place. That's what I got from it. So my takeaway was sing your songs, Dré, write your songs, do your podcasts with Stacia, all of that. But don't get so obsessed in the zone that it takes away from the joy of being in the zone.
Yeah. And I think, just to not to beat a dead horse, but like, I think we all have seen how like celebrity figures, artists who are objectively, like famous or who have arrived, at success or whatever. It's not like we see those people as unanimously happy. You know what I mean? Like we've seen those artists go into sunken places. And so I think that whole, the fact that we see this play out, in celebrity figures and successful artists, should lead us all to have this conversation with ourselves about like, is success happiness, and what is success, and how do we shift our perspective to feel satisfied with, living our lives the most fully in whatever iteration of our path or process that we're in, and not get so doggedly fixated on arriving somewhere,
100%. I'm trying to find. Oh, here it is. Perfect. There's a quote in the movie where Dorothea says, "What's wrong, Teach?" And he goes, "It's just I've been waiting for this day for my entire life. I thought I'd feel different." When he's like, experiencing the thing, and he's just like, I thought this was going to be every. That's how I feel about Broadway sometimes. It's like I thought, I've been waiting for this day my entire life. I thought I'd feel different about it, and I still love the work that I do, but there's elements of it that are still kind of surprising in the body once you're actually living it. And She stops for a beat and she says, "I heard this story about a fish. He swims up to this older fish and says, 'I'm trying to find this thing they call the ocean.' The ocean," says the older fish, "that's what you're in right now. This," says the younger fish, "this is water. What I want is the ocean." And that's how we behave. That's how we behave. Like it's with life. I got bananas on the counter. I got tangerines on the counter. I got apples on the counter. I got all of these wonderful things. This is water, but what I want is the ocean. I don't mind the ambulances, Stacia. Ambulance is a part of life.
Truly.
I hope the person that's in it makes it.
It's okay.
Because we did, and Some people did not this morning. But yeah, I mean, we're so busy looking for the ocean when we're actually in the water. And I love that this story, another one that stuck with me, was about this fish, because how are you going to be a fish in the water looking for the ocean? But we do it all the time.
We do. Yeah, I love that little parable, because I think, yeah, it's like we all, I think, can really we can lose sight of the joyfulness that is, that whimsy that we have when we're small, and everything is new and it's exciting because, like, society hasn't told us we're supposed to think or feel a way about any of the experiences. We're just sort of like, we're just engaging. And I think we can all get back to that place if that is a thing that we want for ourselves, and can be, have a teachable enough spirit to keep wanting to come back to a place of just being present, of with gratitude for what it means to live in a body as a human, like warts and all. Yeah, it's not always like feels pleasant, but I'm still grateful for the experience because of the knowledge that it is finite, and that's the other message I think I got from the movie, is that, like, if you're not grateful, this thing is going to pass you by before you know it, and it does regardless. And so if you don't try your hardest to slow the experience down enough by being mindful as much as you can in practice, it'll pass you by. Not only will life pass you by, but it will pass you by in a way where when you look at the movie adaptation that is your life experiences, you'll say, damn it, if only I had realized to, like, be present in that moment when I had my first kiss, when I was in that first love, the first time I watched Fantasia, the first time I saw a meadow of wildflowers, or whatever, all of the things, all of those moments of joy and beauty. If we don't, like, fully I think for me, practicing mindfulness is not just about, like, being able to be calm and not be anxious, but it's also about being able to be present enough when I'm feeling, like, really strong emotions of joy and happiness. I think sometimes I can dissociate from those experiences because I'm like, I can't have nice things, or, like, this is too much, it's too much of an experience, and I need to try. Like, if you're trying too hard to encapsulate a memory, you're actually doing the opposite of that, because you're thinking about it rather than embodying it. And so, like, mindfulness for me helps me to be just, like, fully immerse myself in embodying what it feels like to be in joy. And the more we can do that, the more we can really, like, feel like we've lived wholly and fully because we felt it in our body, not in our mind,
I love it. I mean, this movie taught me to stay fully immersed in my body, as you're saying. It taught me to stay on my flow, and also taught me to watch where the fuck I'm going when I'm walking, because he could have avoided all of this.
That's absolutely when I didn't even take that away, and I truly should have, my goofy blind ass. Exactly. Like, I'm not trying to die in a manhole.
Watch where you're walking.
What an embarrassing way to die.
You heard what happened to Joe?
They fell down a manhole, and we never saw them again.
I'm not trying to go out like that. Thanks, everybody, for watching the Taking Up Space podcast with Stacia Dré, Andre and the Flow, and Stacia J. Turner. We have been here talking for the last hour and 3 minutes or so about Soul, a Pixar movie that made an indelible impression upon us as far as it relates to life lessons. I think it's very odd that not odd. That's not the word I'm looking for. It's refreshing. In an noteworthy way that adults are still being able to glean so much from this, this kind of cartoonish storytelling in 2020 while we're stuck in the house. I gleaned a lot from it about how to not take my art so seriously and just let it flow through me and enjoy my life. That's how I want to be like Joe. And I've been afforded so many second and third and fourth and fifth chances.
Ooh, child, speak on it. Same though.
And I just want to take those lessons that he taught with me and just not be a fish in the water
looking for the damn ocean that you're swimming in.
The word that I thought you were going to reach for in your synopsis was, we're dwelling in so much abundance.
Oh, yes, we are.
There's so much plenitude. Even with me being an out-of-work Broadway actor on unemployment, I'm still in the water. There's still so much goodness going on, and we're still being sustained and taken
House of abundance.
It's wonderful. It's a wonderful thing if you choose to recognize it. So anyway, Stacia, I recognize you. I thank you for coming on today and talking about like you're a guest, but I still thank you for coming on and sharing space with us on Taking Up Space. It's episode 10 of our podcast. We do about one every 6 years. And so if you're lucky enough to catch this love,
it's a pop-up, as I keep saying.
It is.
Supply and demand, nigga.
I love it. There's been a significant amount of people in here today kind of taking in the love and soaking in the amazingness that is, our energy. One thing that I've discovered since monitoring the feed, Facebook now allows that when you turn down the screen to 0 volume, it automatically puts in captions for you. So that's a wonderful accessibility thing.
That is an excellent accessibility feature.
Yeah. If you're in the car and you're the evil that is Facebook, if you're in the car following along and you don't want to disrupt anyone, you can still see what we've been saying. So yeah, your words have been appearing. I know they're also going to the NSA, CIA, and FBI.
Also, let's hope you're not reading these captions as you're driving a machine, but
well, they're going to read that now, and hopefully they won't fall into a manhole of their own. Do you have any closing thoughts for the viewers as we shut this thing down for episode 10?
I just want to, I guess, end with the fact that, at the beginning of the year, I said that my intentions for the year were to be mindful and present and to mind my own damn business. And this movie helped me as a meditation tool on those things and what it means to sort of not get caught up in the anxiety and the becoming a lost soul in our own making by getting obsessed with a certain rigid idea of what we're supposed to be, and to just enjoy the experience of living. And I'm happy any time I get some kind of tool that helps me to remember that. And being in relationship with you continuously helps me to remember that. So I'm grateful for it and for you.
Well, I'm certainly going to end a praise of me. That's the perfect way to end. No, let me stop. No, the feeling is mutual, Stacia. It takes two to tango. You've always been a willing and joyful participant in the joy that is our co-creative experience. It's wonderful to walk along this creative life path with you. Without you in this ecosystem, I think we ran out of music. We sure did. Without you in this fractal of mine, I would just be talking to myself. And while that's valuable,
lovely,
we wanna share. I think that life is better when we share. I think life is better when. Maybe that's just the way I'm set up. I mean, I like being alone. I am an introvert. Once I stop talking now, I'm going to be done talking for the rest of the day. I cleared the calendar for the rest of the day, so I won't speak to another human being today.
I need to work on that.
Just for conservation of energy and flow, right? But all the same, I could come in here and spill my musings about that movie, but I feel like we unearthed pieces of it that I didn't even see. By being together. So I thank you for that.
The feeling is mutual.
And to all of our invisible compadres,
we love you.
We do love you. We love you so much. You've been watching over on YouTube, the Love City Arts Facebook, and also my personal Facebook account today. And I've seen we've gotten quite a few viewers coming in and listeners to soak in the love. So we are so grateful for you for watching and kind of tuning in. As you said before, we want to use this platform as a way to express ourselves and get our love out into the world, but then also as a personal archive to see where we were on March 28th in time, a Libra full moon, in the midst of this pandemic. And I think that is the kind of balance and the kinds of energy that we're seeking with each other, and then to hopefully pour out into the world as we can.
Yes, for the Black History Archive. I'm here for it.
That's it. Thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you next time on Taking Up Space with Stacia Dré.